Why, hello everybody, and welcome to another episode of Butler's Babble. And welcome. I know it's been a couple months, but we've had some holidays here and things like that. And so we're coming back to you live with our 10th episode. We made it to 10. We're trying to make it to that 12, that 1 year point. But we got a great show booked for you today. I'm sure you're going to love it. And a couple of housekeeping things here. Just a reminder, we are coming to you straight through StreamYard. So in order for us to know who's making comments, as you're allowed to leave comments through the Facebook or the YouTube feed if you're watching us live, be sure to go to streamyard.com/Facebook and give them permission to use your name. That way we'll know who it is that's coming on there and I don't have to go and check it through the stream here. But if you could do that, that'd be great. And welcome to our new set. We are starting with our new set today. We just built this in the last week and we hope you like it. We wanted to change things up a little bit. And so this is our new set that we're going to be doing, and we'll add to it here and there. We got little changes we'll do to it here and there. But overall, I hope you like it and just freshens it up a little bit. So today's show, though, I don't want to go too long, but we're going to bring in our two guests that we have here. Amazing show. We have Claire Jones and Amaranthia Sepia, who are a mother-daughter duo that actually are the founders of Sista Creative Rising, and their mission is to help marginalized women identified and femme-expressing creatives gain accessibility and visibility in the arts to facilitate personal healing. And so not to get too much into their stories, I'm going to let them come in and let you know their stories. So let's bring in Claire and Amaranthia. And how are you two ladies today?
Oh, good. I'm busy.
It's that time of year, I know.
Yes. Oh my gosh.
So just so people know, Claire, you're on the left with the nice, beautiful red glasses on there and the amazing haircut. And Amaranthia, you're on the right. And we're going to do this in a little differently because you are actually the first guest we have where it's a duo guest. Usually I just have one person I'm talking to. So this is the first time we have two of you on there with two kind of separate stories but sort of intertwined together. So I think it's going to be an amazing show. So we talked about it earlier this week, and we agreed that we're going to try and maybe we'll start with Claire and go with her story, of course, and then we'll merge it into Amaranthia, and then we'll merge these both together, and we got some stuff to play. And if there's anybody that's going to be listening to this on the audio portion of this, whether it's on Spotify or things like that, there might be some videos or photos being played in this. So if you hear us talking about them, that's what they're talking about, and you can always come to YouTube and check it out on there. But just so you know, you're not missing out on anything. We are just showing some videos and stuff like that. So from there on, why don't we bring you guys in? And Claire, why don't you give us a little bit about Claire, a little background about you as a little teeny one, and we'll go from there.
Oh, hi everyone. Well, I was born and raised in Barbados under domestic violence, born into domestic violence, and it was made my life very difficult from very young.
Mm-hmm.
And I was 4 years old when I remembered my dad beating my mom up in the streets. And I was staying at a relative's house, and I remembered very vividly hearing that noise outside and the fear that that brought for me, hearing my parents fighting like that. But at the same time, there was a light emitting from a candle and kerosene lamp that kind of brought us. It soothed me and made me feel very calm at the same time. And the next day, my mom went back to my dad. We were staying at a relative's house, went back to my dad, and the violence blew up. And throughout my life, very young into 7, 8, right up to my teens, it just got worse and worse until we were put out on the street a number of times. And then but 13 was the time it really stuck out.
Okay.
And that was when my brother and my young brother, my mother and I were put out on the streets. And my brother went to live with the Rastafarians in the hills in Barbados. And it just devastated my life. And I dropped out of high school by 15 years old and just lost my way. But through it all, I wrote. I loved writing and I loved journaling. And I would put my thoughts and my feelings down in creative writing or in journals, and that gave me some comfort. And so that was the early part of my life, and then I dropped out of school. I lost all hope, but I did remember that I felt from deep inside that I wanted to write and become a writer, a well-known writer, so that I could free my mom from this violence.
Hmm.
And so later in my 20s, I left the island and I was able to um, begin a new life. And I started to write again, and that helped me navigate my life into my 20s.
Okay. So you've already left the island by this time then.
Mhm.
Where did you go from there then? Where to the States, I take it?
I got a sponsorship
Okay.
to work as a housekeeper in Canada.
Hmm.
And when that didn't work out, I went over to the States. I had a visa and I overstayed that visa. And then things went haywire there for a bit. And then it was then that I found Buddhism, and that told me that I had to take responsibility for my life. And I went back to Barbados. To,
Hmm.
I returned, bought a one-way ticket with advocates and help from people, and went back to Barbados to face immigration to fix it.
Okay. And do you have, and maybe I missed it, but did you say you have siblings or?
I had a brother, and he died. The one that I told you we got put
Yeah.
out in the streets with us. He died. He died at 32. He never came back.
Okay.
He was lost, and he died from AIDS at age 32.
Oh, okay. So it was just you, your mom, and your dad basically in Barbados at that time then.
Yes, yes. No, my dad was gone in and out. Yeah, he was
Yeah.
pretty much gone. It was just my mom, and my brother sometimes would come back and forth, but he was
Mhm.
mostly gone.
So going back to your younger years then in Barbados before you came to Canada,
Hmm.
um, you said it started at an early age where your dad was becoming very violent and stuff.
Yeah.
So it wasn't just emotional or mental abuse that he was very physical.
Yeah.
And was this like right when you were like as a baby basically that's all you
Yeah.
ever knew, or did this start later
Mhm.
on in life?
No, that's all I never ever knew. My mom told me before I was born, he
He
was
was like
doing
that
it.
too.
Yeah, he was like that.
Okay. And so so growing up in something like that, like is it the type of thing where you wake up in the morning, you don't know what that day is going to be like? Do you go to school or go wherever you're
Yeah.
going and you're afraid to come home? Or did you try to do stuff to stay away from home for times? Or,
Yes, you're afraid to come home. You don't know what the day is going to be like. You're always on edge. Um, you are all constantly worrying from a very young age
Mhm.
about if everything's going to be okay. You're just like living in quicksand.
And was there something, did you ever find out, like either from your mom or anybody who knew your family there, um, what caused this, like why he was like this? Or was the
I
neighbors like, did you have neighbors around you that knew what was going on? They just kept their mouth shut? Or was it like this through the whole village? Or like,
I remember my mom. I had a very not much about him. I don't know much about his story, but what little I knew was that he had a stepdad, and I think his stepdad abused him. Something it went like that. It happened to
okay.
him. It and he passed it on.
Yeah. And that happens. I hear that a lot of times where when there's certain situations, whether it's mental abuse, whether it's physical abuse, emotional, any kind of abuse at all, sexual, anything, a lot of times the people that are doing this are ones that went through it themselves. And like you said, they're just passing it on. It's all they ever knew. And
Exactly. Exactly.
so I'm wondering if that's what it was. Now, was this something that was common in that area of Barbados with the males there? And I'm not trying to plaster everybody like that, of course, but you know how sometimes it's something that's happening in the background that people don't even know what's going on in closed doors type of thing. Or did everybody around know that this was going on? Or do you know?
I at that time I only knew about my family.
Yeah.
Looking around me, I saw people who had their parents were together, and they were married, or they were living together. Maybe they had trouble inside their homes, but ours, it was out in the open.
Hmm.
So that was even more traumatic because everybody saw and everybody knew. And
Yeah.
it was no, and Barbados is only 166 square miles. There's nowhere for you to go or to hide.
Yeah.
So you
And it's
can't.
unfortunate because you don't know, like, there's nothing, no shame to you or your mom. I mean, it's not you guys are bringing this on, but of course you're walking around probably blaming yourselves at this time too, because it happens a lot where people, maybe it's something I'm doing. Maybe if I'm just a little better at home, or I'm cleaning better, or I'm doing this, I won't get yelled at or whatever. Now, did this physical abuse go on to you kids too, or was it just mostly with your mom?
Oh, it was with her, and then it would go on to us because as I grew older, I would throw my body in front of her to protect her.
Hmm.
And then it would happen to me. He would get really angry at me because I would intervene.
Yes.
So then it went on to me and to my brother as well. So it was just, but mostly me because I was the most outspoken.
Hmm. And does, maybe it was also because you were a woman, because it sounds like he was very, it was more directed towards women. Maybe he had something towards women. I don't know. And I don't know your dad that
No,
like,
I, it seemed that way to me looking back as I grew
mhm.
older and I learned about something called the intergenerational legacy of abuse.
Okay.
And that is where the cycle is perpetuated. It keeps going on and on and on.
Hmm.
And if there's no one that breaks it, it will go on to different generations and generations. And I made the decision I was going to break it.
Good for
So
you.
even before, I think I made that decision without even knowing it. And that's why I would intervene. When I was
Yes.
that young, I just decided this was not right and I was going to do something about it. And I did
Hmm.
it with my body at a young age, but later I learned to do it through my writing
And research.
and research, but it's a very difficult thing. And you learn that it's something that you constantly have to be, the patterns are within you and you constantly have to be on watch for the patterns that play out.
Definitely. No. And then you said you left for Canada around in your 20s there, I guess your early 20s.
Hmm.
How long were you gone? Like, you were in Canada, then you, of course, you went to the United States for a bit, and then overstayed your visa. They shipped you back basically.
No, I went back.
Oh, you went back. So
I
how
went.
long from when you left to go to Canada and then when you made it back to Barbados? How long of a do you think that was space wise?
It's probably about maybe about 7 years, but I was like, when I realized I made a mistake, I was invisible, and you don't want to live that way. But during that time, I got my GED and SAT. There were night
Hmm.
classes that you could take, so I took them, and I found Buddhism, and the elders told them about my story, and they said, you can't live like this. You have to take responsibility for your life. You made the decision. This is the result. Now you have, if you want to change that decision, you have to go back and fix it. If you
Hmm.
can, you might not be able to fix it. So that's when I voluntarily left.
Now, when you were in North America at the time, were you still in contact with your mom through that time?
Yes, yes, I was
So
still in
you
contact.
knew exactly everything that was going on, and she was filling you in that this is what's
She,
happening. And
no, no, my dad was gone by that time.
oh, I see. Okay,
He
sorry.
was by her, yeah, they broke up when I was about 15 the last
Okay.
time, but they would still go back and forth, but pretty much he wasn't there.
Yeah.
It was just her.
So the abuse was stopped by that time then, roughly by the time you were 15 or so.
Yeah,
Okay.
or yeah, between 13 and 15.
Okay. And then so you go back to Barbados and you start getting things fixed up from there. And then
Yeah,
what happens from there on?
I got advocates who knew that I wanted. I wanted to become educated. I wanted to go to college, and they helped me here to get my ticket and to go back. And I wasn't sure if I was gonna ever be able to make it back. And it was a very brave thing to do that because I didn't
Mhm.
know if I was gonna come back. And I went to Barbados and I got advocates there, and everybody got together, and I was able to. I got help,
Mhm.
and it was a long process, but it worked out, and I got my student visa,
Okay.
and
That was my next question. Was it a student visa that brought you here? So
I came back. Yes,
yeah.
it took a long time. It took a while.
Oh, and yeah, it usually does, of course. And so you come back and you go to you get your student visa and you start going. Where do you go to school?
I first I was first went to I went to college, credited college at in California University, Pennsylvania. I got in there with the help of a boyfriend. I got in there, and then I got a scholarship to Mount Holyoke from an alum saw me performing my poems and stuff on stage at the university, and she recommended that I apply for the Mount Holyoke um, to Mount Holyoke College for the Francis Perkins Scholarship, which is a scholarship that helps older women whose educations have been interrupted with situations like mine.
Hmm.
And I told my story. I had my GED, my SATs. I had been on the dean's list for the first year at that college, and I got in. I got a full scholarship for 4 years.
Good for you.
So it began, everything came back. The
Yes.
mission to write and to tell this story and to maybe try to help my mom um, free herself from this time the violence had gone, but she still had the patterns within her.
Hmm. Is your mom still with us today, or
No, I'm the
no?
only one. I'm the only one living. My dad has died. My brother has died. My mom has died
Yes.
from that nuclear family. I'm the only
Yeah.
one left.
And from the time you were 15, you had no contact with your dad after that, probably. You just sort of.
I I I had contact with him intermittently, but not really. I remember I went back to Barbados one time and I met him and I told him everything. I confronted him and I told him, "You really hurt me and this is what you did to my life." And he said, "I didn't do anything to you. It's your fault." And I was
Yeah.
like, "Okay, whatever. You really need to say sorry." And he said, "I don't have to say sorry for anything." And I realized I have to close this door
Yeah.
and try to fix this gaping wound that was inside of me. I had to find a way to close it myself.
Yeah. And you find that he wasn't going to change. There was nothing you could do to make him
Mm-mm.
change.
I had to somehow fix me,
Yeah.
figure out my way forward.
Good for you. No, I think you've done a great job, and we're glad you're still here. That's for sure. So you go to school and you get your scholarship for 4 years. What you graduate, obviously.
Yeah, I graduated in 1990, but through all that time, remember, the patterns of this violence were still in me. So I was making a lot of mistakes, had a lot of struggles, and kept repeating patterns, getting into relationships, noticing a pattern was coming up that the type of relationships I was getting into, mirrored what I saw with my parents. So
Hmm.
I realized that there was something going on, and that there was some connection,
Okay.
and that the work that I had to do was much deeper. So I went into therapy and tried to figure it out.
Hmm. No, and that's the best way to do it. I know some people are afraid to reach out and ask for that help for, especially with therapy. They think that they're weak and stuff. But I mean, to me, I mean, you have to do it. It's the same with
Yes,
some people don't want to be medicated. It's like sometimes you have no choice. I mean, you got to do what you got to do to make yourself feel better and feel whole and feel like a person again. So, um, no, I'm glad you went and got that help because it is hard to reach out and say, I need something. I need somebody to help me. So,
yes,
um,
yes. And you learn later that I learned about forgiveness, and that I had to somehow find it in my heart in order for me to heal.
mhm,
And when you think about forgiveness, how can you forgive someone that hurt you so did that to you, right? But I realized that forgiveness wasn't for him, it was for me.
mhm.
In order for me to go forward, I had to come to terms with this individual in my life that was the person that I obviously loved,
Mhm.
but created such conflict and trauma in my life. And I had to work through a lot of things.
No, definitely. And I know that with a lot of people too, I always go back to the old saying, you can always forgive, but you can never forget.
Yes.
And,
Doesn't
but
mean
you,
you forget.
no. And that's the best way to do it. I mean, you can always tell people, and I have people like that too, that there's been things that they've done that I can't forget it. They've lost that trust, but I can forgive the person. I mean, we all make mistakes and we all do things and that, but I know I won't forget it, and you can't really forgive them or I mean, not forgive, but you can't trust them again. That whole
Mm,
honest trust is gone. They got to build that back
no,
somehow.
exactly.
And
And the fear that you have is like, wow, am I gonna am I gonna one day pass this on to my children?
yeah,
So you have that other fear now. Am I capable of doing this kind of thing? Because you know that people sometimes you hear and you see people who pass it on, right?
hmm
So you have that new worry as you get older. Are you going to pass it on to your children?
yeah. So after you graduate, what happens to Claire then?
I met
I
my
guess you're or late 20s by now, or early
Yeah,
30s.
I had come back from burying my brother. I had done a research trip to Senegal, West Africa, to be for my project, my final project.
You were in your mid 30s?
I was
Or
in my
almost mid.
around 36,
Okay.
37, and I met my husband right at the end of all that, and I got married, got pregnant, and was on my way back to Barbados and to go back to Barbados. But then I met my husband and got married, got pregnant, and was like, okay, I'm in a marriage, so I stayed with him, and um, Amaranthia was born
In 99.
in 1999,
Mhm.
and um, we're here.
Yeah. So that basically changed your whole life because now you're in a new chapter. I mean, first
I'm in a
to
new
me,
chapter,
you've got about four chapters I find in your life. One is, of course,
number of
from
chapters.
born till about 15 years old is one chapter. Then
Mm-hmm.
from 15 to
Late 20.
basically 20s or so when you're in North America, and then you go back
Mm-hmm.
and do a third chapter of your life,
Mm-hmm.
which brings you back to America. You get your schooling, you get married, you have a beautiful daughter. You can see
Mm-hmm.
right there. She's
Mm-hmm.
Oh, thank you.
and then now you start maybe a fifth chapter of your life now. So now you
Yeah,
get married, you have a daughter, you have a degree, I guess, by this
yeah, I have
time.
a degree, but my husband and he was working from home. We decided that I was going to stay home because he was filing for my green card at the same time. So I stayed home and took care of the house and the family.
hmm
He went out to work, and then Amaranthia, then 9/11 happened, and a whole bunch of things happened. Things changed again, and we ended up in Japan. He got an offer to work in Japan, so we moved there, and
So this
that
would have
was
been about 2003, I think, because if I'm not mistaken,
2000.
Amarantha, you were about 4 years old, I guess, when you moved to
Yeah,
Japan.
2000,
Yes,
yeah,
2004.
2000, yeah,
Okay.
yeah, and we moved there, and stay stay at home mom taking care of Amaranthia of the
That must have been a
home.
culture shock right there.
Yeah, but
Oh,
it was
yeah.
wonderful because the Buddhism I practice is Japanese Buddhism, and I was
Very
right
true.
there.
Very true.
I was right there, so I was very
Oh, yeah.
excited to
Yes.
learn about the culture because
Yeah.
it's not easy to get to Japan, and we were there as an expat family living in right downtown Tokyo in a nice area, nice apartment, really great job. Amaranthia was in international school, and it was the opportunity to immerse myself in the culture and to when my husband was at work, I was able to do things in with the other moms and stuff, and it was great. And so that's another thing, a whole nother thing that I didn't expect
hmm
my life to go in that direction.
Yeah. And I can see it in your face as you're talking about it because
Yeah.
I'm very good at watching. I'm a photographer by trade, of course, so I'm always
Hmm.
observing people and going body language and that. I'm just watching your body language through this whole podcast so far, and that first 20 minutes we're going in there, and it's just you could see the sort of look in your face and the body language. And as
Yeah.
soon as you said we moved to Japan, the
Yeah.
big smile came
Yeah.
out, and it's just a
It
whole
was great.
different atmosphere, and
Yeah.
you could see that this is a part of your life that you're very proud of.
Yes.
Yes.
Because it was just beautiful, and I modeled there. I modeled for campaigns with Nissan, and I did documentaries because there weren't many people who looked like me there.
Mhm.
And so I got opportunities to model. And I remember I had this modeling opportunity, and we drove out to the countryside. I was working with this other lady, and we're telling a story about an American um, twin, and they were
I think called Siamese.
yeah,
twins.
Siamese twins. They were attached at the head,
Okay.
and I had to go through this whole thing where they put this rubber mask on my face. This sculpt, they had to sculpt my face with the other lady, so we were like this in this documentary, and we had they took us out to this place where they filmed it, and I didn't know I was at the foot of Mount Fuji until I woke up in the morning after the filming was done, and I looked out, and there was Mount Fuji rising up, and I was like, oh my goodness. I was like, oh my goodness, there it was. And Mount Fuji is where the one of the temple is in
For
Barbados.
Buddhism and that, yeah.
Yes. And I at that time I wasn't sure, and then I found out later. I was like, oh my goodness. And there was staring at it right across. I
Hmm.
could just see it. It was massive and just rising up. And I was like, this is incredible. Coming from where I came from to this,
Hmm.
that's how I know that that's how I know that, life, you just got to keep on living.
Yeah.
Because moments like, you never know when you're going to get moments like that.
No. No, I definitely I just love seeing the progression because like I said, I can see it in your face and that. So now you're there for about 2 years, I guess, 3 years.
Yeah.
Two and a
Mhm.
half, 2.5
Yeah.
years.
And then the crash happened. And the crash started happening, the 2008 crash.
Okay.
It started happening over there. People started losing their jobs.
In 2006.
Yeah, we were supposed to be there for 5 years, and it just suddenly left, and
Yeah.
we were shipped back.
So where did you go back to this time? You're back in the States, but whereabouts did you go? Were you in the
We
east, the
came
west?
back. We came back to Connecticut where we had been before,
Okay.
and we got an apartment there in
Different town though.
different town,
Mhm.
and
Suburbs.
yeah, suburbs. By this time, Amaranthia had to be in school, and
Elementary.
elementary school,
First grade.
and both my husband was working, gone again. He was mostly gone, and it was both of us again. And she had to learn how to ride the school bus, and immediately was immersed into American school situation that she never understood. I didn't understand it either. So both of us were like,
Yeah.
totally, what the heck is this?
Yeah.
We didn't know.
Exactly.
It was very difficult.
Well, we do have more of your story, of course, to get to, of course. So it's just
Mhm.
more recent. But before we do that, why don't this might be a good segue into
Yeah.
Amaranthia, because now we're at points where you're into the picture now. So
Yeah.
why don't we get people to know a little bit more about you? We'll turn it over to you a little bit before we get into the stuff in 2022 and things like that with
Mhm.
you guys. Now, why don't we go into 1999? This beautiful bundle of joy comes to the world. And I love the name too. Is there a meaning behind the name or?
Yeah. So it means Amaranthia is based off of the flower grain amaranth, which is like it's seen as like a healing grain,
Mhm.
right?
The
And
Greek.
yeah, it's a Greek botanical name.
Mhm.
And amaranth, if people don't know what it looks like, it's like it looks kind of like locks or dreadlocks.
Okay.
It's very thick. It's reddish. It could be purplish. It's kind of
So that's why you got dreadlocks.
well, yeah. I kind of worked that way. I had them from very early.
From very early.
Yeah. At one point in my teens, I shaved them because my hair got damaged.
Yeah.
Which I'll talk about why that happened, but later on. But
And
yeah.
people don't realize that, Claire, you had dreads for a while too.
Like hers.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Sorry, I just had to throw that in there. So.
Oh yeah, it was a major part of my childhood. So all
Yeah.
of her modeling photos, and she had locks.
Yeah.
So
Very
I think
cool.
when she came back, she didn't have them. She
Oh, okay.
eventually shaved them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. She just wanted to look more like me. Can't
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
No, we'll get back to Amaranthia there. Okay. So sorry, I interrupted you there. So go right ahead.
But yeah, when I was born,
Now, this was in Connecticut too?
This was
She was born
Northampton.
in Northampton, Massachusetts.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. So I had a lot of health issues from the beginning, like eczema. I remember you always told me I was always crying. Had stomach issues. It's just really sensitive baby. And you had issues with breastfeeding too. So it's like all these different things going on. And as I grew up, I was always the shy kid. I didn't like giving eye contact. I was always quiet and wanted to kind of hang around my mom a lot. And from very early, we moved from Northampton, Massachusetts to Manchester, Connecticut, which I believe is it's diverse.
Right after 9/11 happened.
Yeah, right after 9/11. So this is like 2003. And from that age, so I was like 4 years old, kids wouldn't want to play with me because I was like one of the few black kids that would be at the or black girls that was at the playground or like any play center. So
the Y.
Yeah, the Y. Both in Northampton and in Manchester. So like kids would just avoid me. I would try to talk to them. I would try to say hi if I was still shy, but I would try to have the courage to, and they would just act like I was a monster because of my locks, just because of how I look. And I guess some of these kids they never interacted with anyone of color. So I didn't fully realize why that was happening, but obviously my parents knew. So I didn't have a lot of friends from the get-go until I went to Japan. So that was 2004, and my dad got expat opportunity. He is in IT, so we moved there, and I went to international school. So I went to international preschool and international kindergarten, and the kindergarten was called Nishimashi International School. So it's one of the best schools out there, and so
it wasn't just Japanese kids; it was a mixture of all.
Oh yeah. Yeah,
different nationalities and stuff.
Exactly. So there were kids from Sweden. I think had kids from Nigeria, Hong Kong, UK,
very multicultural.
Canada. Oh yeah. So it was still like a good amount of Japanese kids and some mixed kids as well. But I had a little bit more representation, but I still felt kind of out of place. Like an example is like I would draw myself with straight hair a lot of times growing up in kindergarten, because I would be like, oh, I just want to look like everyone else. And my mom would always be like, no, this is how you look. Like, you need to embrace how you look.
But it's hard on kids. That peer pressure at that age is hard.
Yeah. And I didn't really have a lot of issues with bullying. The two kids that gave me the most issues were American, but everyone else, I had friends from all around the world. So it was very interesting. The American kids were actually the most intolerant towards me. So, and my family as well. So,
did you learn any Japanese while you're there?
Oh yeah, it's because Japanese was incorporated into all of our classes. So we were learning English and Japanese. So if I got to stay longer, I would have been totally bilingual. My parents were learning as well and taking classes, but I missed that opportunity because we got cut short. But
yeah,
it was really the culture, like my mom said, the Japanese Buddhism that we practice, and saying also Shintoism, the native religion there, that really influenced me. So the mythology, everything else, just the art was incorporated into all the places we went, the temples, the shrines, events. So it's very integral. Festivals. I participated in festivals.
Oh, cool.
So, yeah.
Is Japan where you got into doing your artwork? Is that what inspired your artwork and you became drawing a lot more at that time, or was it more when you came back to America?
I think I was always drawing. So when I was there, because I was a massive fan of like Pokemon video games, I got into manga. So I was getting into like comics and stuff and anime. So I more so anime when I came back to the US, but I I was just drawing a lot of Pokemon and video game characters at that time. But when I came back to the
Pikachu
US,
went with you everywhere.
oh yeah, I have pictures of me with
Pikachu.
like
Yeah.
talking Pikachu that I would carry everywhere. I wanted to be Ash Ketchum so bad. So I always had like my Pokemon, outfits or plushies. And stuff.
Yes.
But yeah, so I would say when I came back though, yeah, I was definitely doing art more. But like I was modeling as well, with my mom and sometimes without.
Mm-hmm.
But you would bring me to these places. I didn't like getting pictures taken of me though.
Mm-hmm.
So I told my mom I'm done with this after we came back. But basically I got the model with Tezuka Productions, which is like Tezuka is like seen as the god of manga. Like he's like the one that revolutionized and kind of created manga and influenced anime from I think like 30s, 40s.
Yeah.
He passed in the 1980s, so he massive part of the culture. So he became an influence for me later on, but I didn't know that I modeled for his company until I was like 15.
I think so.
But I modeled one for the company when I was like 5 or 6. So those were the kind of things that like little influences everywhere that eventually really heavily influenced my artwork.
And that's when you look at your mom and you go, I pose for who?
Yeah, right?
Yeah, she was.
Are you serious?
Yeah, at 15, I was like, I did this for Tezuka.
Yeah,
This
she
is like
was-
my favorite artist of
She was
all
actually,
time
before we left, she was scouted on the street here in the States,
in Boston.
in Boston.
Mhm.
They came, people, this modeling agency came up and they loved her and they said, we want her to be a part of our agency. And it was, we went and we got her pictures done. And then when we moved to Japan, we had her portfolio from them to take. And that's where she started to model.
That's very cool.
Mhm.
But then, of course, that wasn't for you, so you stopped modeling, and then you turn around 6, and then the crash happens, like you said, and you guys move back to America, and now you're going through a big culture shock because you're going to school in Japan at a very young age. So basically, that was like home to you, really, when you think about it, because half of your life was in Japan at that time.
Yeah, exactly. So when we moved back into right before we moved back, I was having issues with high blood pressure. I don't think it was like diagnosed yet.
Yeah.
But again, I was like 6, about to turn 7, so I had nosebleeds. Suddenly, I was having issues with like early puberty. Like it was a lot of weird things happening.
Nosebleed.
That wouldn't stop.
Mhm.
And at times I wonder if it was because of the stress of realizing we had to go back and that I would lose all my friends and most likely lose contact, and we did really when we came back, because we were in a totally different suburban environment compared to living in the city and living with people from diverse cultures. So when we came back, it was really it was like a trauma.
Yeah, no one understood her at all.
And this is like 2006, 2007 area?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So like you didn't even have like Facebook didn't come out, I don't think, till like 2007, 2008. So it's not like you had all these social media things where you can keep in touch with each other and
Yeah, it was like AOL or Hotmail.
yeah, I know exactly.
Those email
AOL,
addresses, Yahoo,
MSN chat rooms. And,
MSN. Yeah, and I was only 6, so like
yeah, so like, you didn't even know what that was.
Yeah, YouTube like just came out. So
Yeah.
that was it, and maybe MySpace, but obviously I was too young for that. So
So that's the end of that chapter of your life. You come back to Connecticut, I think you said it was.
Yeah, this
and start a new school. Now this school, of course, you're going through a rough time. You're having culture shock because, as you stated before, you were the only black girl in a white school, basically an all-white school. Was that the only? Was there no black schools around or mixed schools around there, or was it just mostly all a white neighborhood? I guess.
I think so. Yeah. So we moved to Canton, Connecticut. So before it was Manchester, which had diversity, but again, we were still not really meeting with people within African American community, and so and the school system wasn't that great there.
That's
so
what
we
they said.
That's what they told us. So we were like, okay, we go to Canton, and very white suburb. I think when we moved, we were the only Black family in our neighborhood, and we immediately I was very confused with going on the school bus because I never had to do that. I would always walk to school with my mom, and immediately hit with slurs and being made fun of because we're Buddhists. Like I didn't understand like things like with Christianity because most kids were Christian there. I didn't really meet even a lot of Jewish kids or anything.
Mhm.
So kids would tell me stuff like "you're going to hell," like from very early and try to convert me. So it was just things like that. I had to learn the national anthem. I had to learn the
Money.
currency.
Currency.
I had to learn not to do certain hand gestures. Like I didn't know. Yeah, like
because
because I would do well. I would
in Japan, they would
Yeah.
always take pictures and do this. So she would
yeah
always do Japanese things.
yeah
That
Oh,
didn't make
okay.
sense.
yeah.
to
You know,
people.
like when people do like the rock symbol things like that, I would just be like pointing at things or talk to people and they would be like, oh, you're using the middle. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Like I'm to point at something, like things like
Exactly.
oh, it's like very awkward kid. I had no understanding of American culture at all.
Exactly.
So I was acting like a Japanese kid
Hmm.
and looking African American. My mom is an immigrant, so when they'd meet
Yeah.
her, they would make fun of her. It was a whole thing. So
Mhm.
very complicated.
Especially with kids. Kids can be cruel. I'm telling you.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
I lucked out. Like I grew up in Toronto, Canada area, in a city just called Brampton. It's about 15, 20 minutes outside of Toronto, and very multicultural. So we grew up with Black, Chinese, Japanese, all different nationalities in our school. I'm not going to say racism wasn't around. Of course, we all know that you have your head in a hole if you think there wasn't, but it wasn't as rampant as you're talking about because we grew up in a multicultural area, and so I mean I didn't have to go through that. So I've never had to go through what you guys are going through. Of course, I mean I'm not going to even say I know exactly what you're going through because of course I've never had that. Um, but kids can be cruel, and when they see a weakness in somebody, they're going to go and try and exploit it as much as they can.
Oh yeah, yeah.
They want that control.
Definitely, definitely. And that's what happened because in the end I was still a very quiet kid. I came out of my shell in Japan, but when we went a bit, but then when we came back, I was back to being that quiet kid who didn't like getting eye contact and just constantly being made fun of. I didn't know how to stand up for myself because I never really was in a situation where I was being bullied at such a massive level,
Mhm.
and including by the teachers as well. So it was really difficult not having someone like really just having my parents, especially my mom, because you were at home.
Mm-hmm.
So you were the main person I would go
And your
to.
dad is gone
Yeah,
working.
exactly.
So did you stay in school the whole time, or did you end up dropping out and maybe being homeschooled? Did you end up going to another school, or?
Yeah, so what happened is we had to move to New Hampshire. So this was 2008 now. Um, and that was because my dad was experiencing discrimination at his job. And so we had no choice but to find another job. And eventually we learned about a job in New Hampshire. And so we moved here, and the health issues were getting worse and worse and worse. I got diagnosed with high blood pressure,
Heart.
like heart palpitations, I guess, like tachycardia, things like that eventually. And so when we moved here, we found doctors, and so I was dealing with that, and bullying kept getting worse and worse and worse and worse. It came to a head in middle school. And when we talk about cystic radius rising, I'll go into that more. But it got really, really bad in middle school. The slurs, the name calling, just people straight up acting like I didn't exist. The teachers doing things that would cause like emotional harm, mental harm, intentionally keeping me out of things, and usually being the only Black girl in the room. And the few Black kids that I knew, they were teaming up with the white kids because they were getting bullied. So they're like, well, let's just go on their side and allow them to say these slurs. I wouldn't allow that because I started learning how to stand up for myself. So I was pretty much alone, to the point I was sitting by myself in the lunchroom from like third, fourth grade all the way to like seventh grade. So it was pretty bad, and because of that, I had to become homeschooled online. I had no choice because the teachers and the students were isolating me.
Mm-hmm. Now, and you don't have to answer this if you don't want to, but with this all going on, did it ever get to the point where you started thinking of harming yourself, or?
I think, yeah, I never, like, mentally, I was like, "Ugh, I don't want to be here anymore." I never did any harm, but it was always like feeling that, I really only have my parents. I have my mom. Other family members wouldn't listen to me, and if I would make things up, that I need to just toughen up. Um, Mental health issues in the Black community is a massive, massive issue. It's just not talked about. There's a lot of stigma because of already what we go through as a community. It's especially as Black women, it's like this whole being strong and taking care of everyone else before yourself, and that's implemented in your head from very young. Um, the whole strong Black woman stereotype. So I had that in my head, and even though my mom was like trying to break that cycle and be like, no, she was, she was going through her own
Still going
struggles.
through my own thing.
So I it was also hard getting a counselor because the school counselor told me racism doesn't exist at our school, and I'm like, I'm being called the N-word. Like, what are you talking about? Like, makes no sense. So there was things like that where I just couldn't even get help from a therapist until maybe I was like 21, and I'm or 22, and I'm 23 now. So yeah, it
So
was
yeah, no,
do.
I can imagine what that does too. I know people that struggled in school, and I've had people in my studio here that they come to get photo shoots done, and they enjoy the attention in that, because at school, like you said, they didn't get the attention. They were bullied. They felt like nothing, and they couldn't get the help. Like you said, everything just gets pushed under the carpet.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
and it's so you're getting homeschooled now, and now do you graduate with a high school diploma, or?
Yeah, there were multiple times where I was like, especially when I was 15 or 16, because of what happened is when I became homeschooled online, I had all these health issues that started popping up, and I learned I was at risk of developing Addison's disease, which is an autoimmune disease. And I found a naturopath who's also a medical doctor, and she was diagnosed with Addison's as well. So this was like when I was 2014, so about 14. And so my family, um, again, like really my mom and this doctor, Dr. Amanda, um, they worked so hard to get me to get through school. So there were times where I was like, I really want to drop out because I'm just dealing with flare-ups and dealing with chronic health issues. I don't know what's going on with my body. Constantly getting tested, but eventually, 2018, I graduated, and I had a 3.95 GPA, and I feel like if I was in public school, I was really fighting to keep my grades up, and I had to always ask for accommodations, and that could have been really low, but because of this online program, VLAX, it really saved me, and it gave me so much accommodations. I was able to get onto a plan for people with disabilities, and going through crises and stuff. And so I was always able to have some flexibility. So it really saved me.
Did you find out if you had Addison's disease, or?
It's still something I have to go
Monitored for.
every year to an endocrinologist to
Okay.
get checked for. So from what I understand, I'm still at risk of eventually developing it, but I had very low cortisol, and my doctors were very worried I'd have Addison's or some kind of adrenal insufficiency.
And for anybody that wants to know anything about Addison's disease, if they actually watch our last episode, number 9, we had a lady on here, Jill Battle, and actually that's what she has right now. And her father passed away from Addison's disease, and then she found out 6 years later that she had it. I guess it was genetic or something like that. So, so if you can always watch that episode too and get a little bit more information, because it is hard to find out. It's funny how almost every other disease out there is easy to find out information about, but that's one that's not easy. A lot of information out there. So I can always get you in contact with her if you ever have any questions. I'm sure she would love to help you out and see, because like I said, she's diagnosed with Addison's disease herself, and she's still living a beautiful life. So Maybe she can help you out if you find out, or if you just want more information about it. Now, going back to your schooling there, now middle school, it's all. Did you find that you were starting to do more artwork that way? Was that an out for you? Was that a more creative way to just sort of put everything else behind you and you get in there and you're in your own little world type of thing?
Yeah, especially when we moved to New Hampshire in 2008, I was drawing a lot. Again, a lot of anime inspired, manga inspired, Pokemon inspired stuff. Because I was like only 8 years old, and I started watching more anime and stuff, and I realized like, oh, I want to make my own characters. I just started doing character designing, and I was like, I really want to be a comic artist because my dad would show me a lot of comic art, like the American classics, so like Jack Kirby, and but I was really more into manga, so because of that connection back to Japan, and so I realized that I was creating these characters and getting into these things. So I lost that connection, so I wanted to get back that connection. So to Japan, and I realized that was like my comfort. So art kind of was like my only friend, really.
It was your escape.
Exactly. So when all this bad stuff was going on, and I wasn't welcomed into spaces, I would just pull out my sketchbook. So even at like recess, if no one was talking to me, I just had my sketchbook. And
it's good you had something like that, because I know a lot of people have that. They need an outlet. They got to get it out somehow. They got to get away from everything. Some people go to the gym and work out. Some play an instrument or sing, or some, like yourself, do artwork or things like that. So it's nice that at least you had something to keep yourself a little sanity in yourself.
Exactly. I still have a lot of those sketchbooks from back then too. Yeah. So my mom always kept them. So
yeah, it was throw them out.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, yeah.
So you graduate high school, and now we're gonna get back to, of course, now to your mom in a little bit. But Sister Creative Rising, did that start up before what happened to your mom, or does that come afterwards?
Yeah. So
because if it comes after, maybe we'll talk about your mom a little bit first. I don't know how you want to do it.
Okay. Well, it came before the situation. So I guess I'll go back a little bit to what happened to me in school.
Sure.
What led to me being homeschooled was I was in in elementary. Because of the bullying, my art teacher saw my work, and he did this art show presentation. It was like the first art show at my elementary school. They usually would do at this thing called town meeting every Friday. They would do like presentations and talk about stuff that was happening, and everyone did like an assembly. And because of what was happening to me, and my mom and him had a conversation, or like we need to show her art. So they put together this art show presentation, and all these kids were like, "Wow, this is really cool!" And they started talking to me, and I was like, "What the heck? Wait, this is
I've been here the whole time. What's going on?"
Yeah, and so I realized like this is what I want to do, and I want to do art. I think I realized when I was 8, but like at this point I was 11, and I was like, I really want to do art. Like doing these art shows makes me feel really good. And so in middle school I kept doing that. I got into art school called Kimball Jenkins, full scholarship at like 11. So I was doing adult classes, human figure, things like that. And so I kept going with it, and that was my outlet as well. And when the bullying came to a head, it got so bad. I just came to my mom and said I want to be homeschooled, because kids just kept acting like it didn't exist. I was still dealing with the slurs. I was dealing with bad teachers, and so I put together this project called You Know Who I Am, and it was an anti-bullying project that told my story, and it was supposed to be a way for other kids to tell their story through presentations and give their background. And so I was supposed to do like a whole tour with this kind of art show, kind of activist hybrid thing about anti-bullying in the school and also to other schools. And I got to present at a new school. It was really cool, but because I was addressing the issues, like you said, they were putting stuff under the rug. So addressing racism, addressing sexism, addressing, just kids being bullied and how it was being hidden. And the teachers, eventually a small group of teachers got uncomfortable with that. And that's where the isolation started happening even worse. And so
They
that's where
wanted to put it on a curriculum.
yeah, it was actually supposed to be on the curriculum. So it was a massive thing. And so I became isolated by the teachers and students. No one would talk to me. The kids I thought were my friends were bullying me, sometimes stealing my artwork ideas and things like that. So I just started losing everything and started having panic attacks. And as a result, we faced the superintendent's office. They paid us to buy a computer, and I became homeschooled because of that um, situation. And but
This was middle school area?
this was middle school, so I
So
was like
about 13, 14?
13, 14, yeah. And so what happened was my mom, we were so devastated by what happened that we were like, we need to take this project and transform it. So we turned it into a project called I'm Proud of Who I Am. And with the help of a adult student at Kimball Jenkins, we did a tour around our county and went to different libraries, telling my story, talking about anti-bullying. But I didn't get to tell the full story because of my experience with race and sexism. So it was a little bit censored. So coming into, I ended that in 2016. So I was like 16, 17. And I kept being like, I really want to do this, but at a bigger scale, like really addressing these problems that they prevented me from addressing. And when I graduated, I got into college, I got into SCAD. I couldn't go because couldn't afford it. Then we went into
the pandemic happened.
Pandemic happened.
Mm-hmm.
So conveniently, I decided, I'm not going to go. And then pandemic happened, so it was kind of saved us from having to pay all these loans and stuff. And then I lost all these art show opportunities, and I decided, you know what, we need to start doing these shows virtually. And so we just kept doing activist shows virtually, and then we did our first show, big show, Art and Mind, in 2021. That was for like a woman of color, disabled woman, invisibly disabled woman telling their stories through film, through documentary, through film, fundraising for Brain Arts, a nonprofit in Boston that we became friends with during the pandemic. And we raised $750, and it was really successful. And we were like, you know what? We need to go and take a class, a course, a business course. And within that business course, right after the show, we did that for 3 months, and we created Cystic Rays Rising under that whole name. And we're like, okay, this is going to be a project, but we're going to turn it into a business, and Art and Mind is going to be under that. We're going to expand this whole concept of helping the marginalized women creatives tell their stories. But then my mom got diagnosed with cancer, and we'll go into that. But everything came into a halt. This was now 2022.
Yes.
Mhm.
So now
Exactly.
we'll go back over to Claire now. So now everything's starting to go your guys' way. You guys are starting to get on track, and then boom, you get hit with this news.
Yes.
Yes. So it was towards the end of the course in 2021. I began to feel was getting tired and really lethargic. And I just thought it was menopause. So just went on. And by the end of that year, I learned that my mom had died, but I couldn't really do anything. I was beginning to feel sick at that time and couldn't really do anything about it. And plus, we were estranged. My family and I weren't in talking or anything. So I just had to take care of myself. So came into the new year, and things kept getting worse. And again, I thought it was menopause. And then by March 25th, March 18th or so, I started to lose my ability to walk.
Yeah. So this was.
Yeah.
We launched the Cystic Creatives Rising website on March 18th.
Yeah.
We were about to launch everything else, and then next day she started losing the ability to walk.
Losing my ability to walk. And within that week, it just started to it got worse and worse and worse till on the 24th. I tried to get up to go to the toilet, to the bathroom in the middle of the night, and my feet just gave out from under me, and I was like, was beginning to feel the cold rising up. And I got to the bathroom, and I couldn't believe what was happening. I didn't know what was happening. And I sat in the toilet. I sat in a closed toilet from 4 o'clock to 7 o'clock because I was really anxious about everything. I was worried about if here in New Hampshire, there are not many people looking like me, and from my background, worried about if I can get a doctor that would even understand what was happening to me, because only 5.7% of doctors in the US are black. And I didn't know if I would get anyone who would relate to what I was going through. Worried about that, worried about um, having problems with almost losing our home because of the pandemic, worried about money, worried about this, worried about that. How is everything going to work? I've been a homemaker for so long. All these things.
Our
And
car broke
our
down
car
as
broke
well.
down. Everything was falling apart. Um,
Mhm.
Having difficulty in my marriage and all these things. And I was like, how am I going to get through this? And by 7 o'clock, the coldness kept going up. I got up and crashed to the ground, and I knew I couldn't. I had to let everything go. I just had to go. Whatever happened, happened. And I called Amaranthia, and she called the ambulance. And next thing you know, I got to the hospital, and they found this massive tumor on my spine,
Mm.
on my upper spine, like a donut. They said it was wrapped around, and by the end of the day, they told me I had 50% paralysis of being paralyzed,
Mhm.
and they had to immediately go for emergency surgery. And I had to sign the directive because we didn't know what was going to happen. All of that in the space of hours.
Like 24 hours, I think.
And I ended up going to surgery and lost a lot of blood and everything. But when I came out to the surgery, um, my legs moved, and they were surprised because it was spinal surgery
Yeah.
basically. And I had, tubes coming in, different tubes and everything,
Yeah,
and
drainage.
yeah, drainage and everything, and they said this was basically what was happening was in the rare 1% after such a surgery. And they said we have to get you to rehab right away. This is amazing. We gotta we gotta grab onto this thing that's happening. And they
Mhm.
I got into rehab a few days later, and I had to use a wheelchair, walker, everything. I couldn't move, couldn't. It was really terrible, and
You had the brace.
I had a brace
Yeah.
because it was spinal surgery, so I had to wear a brace for 8 weeks.
It was 8 weeks.
8 weeks.
Mhm.
That I could only take it off when I got into bed,
Mm.
and I couldn't look left, right, up, and down, only forward.
Yeah.
And that was the metaphor for my life, basically. And during that time, I just use my Buddhism and I listen to Louise Hay affirmations. And my practice is about karma. My practice is about basically the law of cause and effect. And the law and cause of effect is represented by the lotus flower in the mud. So I kind of imagine myself sitting on that lotus flower. The lotus flower doesn't get any mud on it, even though it's in the mud. And I imagine that was my life was in the Lord's flower. All the sludge, all this stuff was going on, but I was safe,
Mhm.
and I carried myself through. I just became very positive, and I just all my negative thoughts that were my friends for years and years, all that baggage that I'd carried. I said, "You have to get off here.
Mhm.
You have to get off here. No more.
Yeah.
All this nonsense with the abuse and all this. No more. I
Yeah.
have to get out of this. I have to get back home to my daughter and to my life." And my middle name is Claire, and I started to utilize that more
Mhm.
because Claire means bright. And so I decided that after I come out of that, I was going to live my life a bright and optimistic life. And so I went into chemo and radiation all through last year, learning to walk again like a baby. And
Mhm.
um, I came home, had to have nurses at home and everything. And I had pneumonia. I had to go back in the hospital for bronchoscopy to clear out my lungs from the chemo and everything. And it was just one after the next. But fortunately, I got through all that. And by October, they told me I had come into remission
It's like 2 days before my
2
birthday.
days before her birthday.
What a
Yeah.
birthday present to get.
right?
Yeah. And,
Yeah, it's amazing.
and I just kept going, and I said, you know what? When I came home, one of the nurses that saw me, they were telling me my chart looked so crazy. And I said, I'm going to walk by the summer. And she said, don't get ahead of yourself. And I was like, okay, I'm going to walk by the summer.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And by the end of the summer, I was walking.
After your
Good
first
for
kid.
you.
And I just kept going,
Yeah.
and I'm walking now. I walk with a cane, but
Hmm.
pretty much I have a little neuropathy and stuff. I still have a little achiness in my back where the cancer was, but
Mhm.
I have to go to the hospital every 2 months for checks, and the next 2 years are going to be critical because the cancer could come back.
Mhm.
But I kind of live in that bright space, clear and bright,
Yeah.
and I use this 5 step process called clarity, awareness, presence, acceptance, gratitude, and my Buddhism and my affirmations. And every day I live in gratitude.
Yeah. When they said that percentage, 1%. Um, so are they trying to say the other 99 they either don't survive or the other 99 just don't walk again?
Yeah, it's like I guess they were saying that this you're in the rare 1% to walk again
To walk
after
again.
the
Okay.
surgery.
Yeah.
It's very rare because you know,
Yeah, there
And I
was
know how hard that is and what you're going through your mind because I know with my wife, I've told the story before, I think on the show where my wife was in
yeah,
hospital for 4 months. And when it came down to the point to April 1st, they were going to send her home. And they said, you know what, we think you'll be more comfortable at home. Basically, they just figured there was nothing more they can do for her. And they were just going to thought that maybe she'd be better off at home if she was to pass
mhm,
away with her family and that they
mhm,
didn't think they were ever going to see her again.
mhm,
And so they said on April 1st, we're going to send you home. And of course, she's thinking, was it's an April Fool's joke or something? Because she'd been hospitalized for 4 months. Are you
mhm,
really going to send me home? So, and then when the doctor comes and says, do you mind if I make a prayer for you? You don't think that that's a good sign.
mhm,
But she came home and we stayed at her parents' place because they had a 1 level house. And just by being home, we had a 2-month-old baby when she went in. Now the baby was 6 months old and our
mhm,
6-year-old daughter. And I think just missing the family, missing life, just being stuck to this bed for 4 months, it was just depressing and keeping her in that state. She came home and here she is now, what, 15, 16 years later, she's still with us. She's doing better than ever. And I think it was just like you said, it's that positivity. Once you're in
yeah,
that hole, it's hard to dig
mhm,
yourself out. And when
yeah,
you're sick like that, it's even harder to dig it out. And
exactly. And where I've come from, I've hit a lot of bottoms. As you
mhm,
said, so many chapters. I was born into something that was very painful and traumatic. So, and I've gone through so many ups and downs and so many trials and tribulations, so much suffering. But at that moment, I knew that I had Amaranthia at home who had taken care of through all her health issues. I knew that I had to get back to her to make sure she was okay because I felt that, she still had a long way to go.
yeah, I think
And she really, just the thought of her
yeah.
and just pulled me through. And I said, I have to get back. And
mhm.
I'm not going to live that way anymore. I'm going to change my life and live on as clear as a bright, optimistic individual. And I have all these tools that I use to keep me in that space now.
Mhm. No,
Yeah.
I think it's amazing. And your story, both of your stories are just amazing because it's one thing to have one person in the family going through what they've gone through, but to have all of you going through what you went through
Mhm.
and look at you now. You guys are prospering. I mean, we've all got still ways to go, and I'm sure you
That's
guys still have ways to go and things you want to do and more
right.
positive things you could do. But I could just see it in your faces. There's a lot more joy in your life right now than there was
Exactly.
even
Exactly.
1 or 2 years ago and 5 years ago. And
Exactly.
because I'm
Right.
sure with you, Claire, seeing your daughter going through all this stuff at school, it
Yeah.
plays a toll on you also because you're already going through your own stuff
And
Hmm.
still
and
going through it.
still going
Still,
through it. And then she's going through all this stuff at school, and that breaks your heart because that's your daughter, that's your flesh and
yes.
blood, and you want to
Yeah.
do everything you can to protect her. Um,
Exactly. And
and
yeah, that's, you just don't know what to do. And so I see having cancer as an opportunity to resurrect my life,
mhm,
to be like a phoenix rising again, and to this is why it's so important that we do this work that we do, because one of my daughters, when she heard my story, she said, you need to get out there and tell this story to the world and let people hear your story.
Yes.
And this is how you're going to heal. And that is when I realized the vehicle of Sister Creatives Rising and our show Art of Mind was the best way to get out here and to share what we've gone through.
Exactly. And that brings us, of course, to your Sister Rising, our Creatives Rising. And so I thought I'd bring your website on for people who do want to see, if you ever want to check out any more stuff about the two ladies and what they're doing and more biography. I mean, you got to go to their website. I was looking at this the other day when we were chatting and after our thing. And then again yesterday, and I watched a little bit again today, and it's got everything. It's got your different speeches and different things you've been on. It's got your, if people want to know more about you guys, it's got your own little press kits on there. They can learn more about you and more about Art of Mind too.
Yeah.
There's a lot of YouTube channels on there too. The stuff you've got on your YouTube channel that I think is phenomenal. I mean, I was going through this and I'm just like, the stuff that you guys have on this is just amazing. And I mean, it's just, we need more people like you guys out here. That's for sure.
Yeah, we're always working to be better, to do better, and to get better. And the work that we put out, it comes from a place of caring about what happens in our community. We realized when we were going through what with Amaranthia and what we went through together, there was no place, there wasn't anywhere that we could go that would listen to us as marginalized women. So we decided to create it from our couch. And the pandemic, as unfortunate as it was, there was opportunity in there. There's always opportunity in any, even in really bad situations. There's always light, you know. And we found light in creating Sister Creatives and Art of Mind. And it to go back to my history, the reason why I do this work is because, remember I told you I wanted to become a well-known writer to help my mom free herself of the violence. Well, she's gone, but now I can free myself of the violence through this work and my daughter, so that she can go on and have a better life, that she doesn't have to go through what I went through. That I can give her a positive image and a positive message to leave in the world. And when I'm gone, I could leave a positive legacy behind. I came in the darkness, but I can go out in the light.
Totally agree. And we've actually had Terry Lynn Horvat come on, and she's like, she said, I am humbled, amazing tenacity. So I think she's saying that to both of you because it's totally true. And I think I'm hoping a lot of people are going to watch this episode. If they have watched it, maybe they'll watch it again or share it with their family and friends. Share the site, because I think your story is going to hit a lot of people, because I think a lot of people, they might not have gone through everything that you guys have gone through, but I'm sure there's people in there that can take parts of your story and say, I've been there, whether it be the discrimination, whether it be just the feeling of being a child that's alone, because it doesn't have to even be from discrimination. There's a lot of children out there that people are just cruel, and kids can be cruel, and they have little sections in their school that this is them and this is them, and you don't mix. And I'm sure a lot of people can take your stories and see a little bit of themselves in there. And also with back in Barbados and what went on with you back there, there's a lot of stuff here that I think people have to see, that it's not something that's just in the background. It happens all the time. But look at you guys. It's happened to you. Look at everything that you've went through, and you still come on here. You still, like, I haven't seen your smile leave in the last half an hour of the show here.
And I remember I woke up at the foot of Mount Fuji.
Exactly.
Everyone would wake up at the foot of Mount Fuji, you know. You never know. Who would have believed that? No one. If someone told me that, I would say, no, what are you talking about?
Exactly.
You know, so as long as there's life, there's hope.
I think you guys are big inspiration, and you inspire me, that's for sure, because it makes people think that they always say grass is always greener on the other side. Well, not always. I mean, sometimes you get to that other side and it's actually more dirt than there was on your side.
That's right. Rock.
Yeah. And you guys have somehow been able to get through all of that. And of course, you're still going through it. Like, I wish you nothing but the best with your um, going through your remission and that. And I hope it stays that way and you still
Yes,
live long and long. And
yes,
I want you to keep up with me, of course, because I
of
want to
course.
keep up with your
Yeah.
story
Sure.
and that. And we become friends now. That's a good thing about this
Yeah.
show is I become friends with everybody. And I hopefully we can share this again. And I'm hoping that maybe in the future we're going to have some of our past guests come on with an update on how they're doing and stuff like that. I would like to do maybe a special and have you all come on for give everybody a little time to say, okay, what's going on with you
Sure.
now and that. So
Sure. That'd
I
be
would love
great.
that. Yeah.
before I mean, we went overtime. I hope you guys were okay with that. I know
Oh
I was
no,
okay
we're
with
fine.
that.
We're fine.
But I'm hoping that if is there anything that you guys before like I'm going to end it with your 2 minute video, of course.
Yeah.
But before we go to that, it explains you guys and your whole project and everything like that. A bit more of who you guys are and what you're doing. Anything else you want to add to anybody or anything you want to say out there to everybody
Yeah.
who is watching this
Yeah.
on a little positive note on something you can leave with everybody?
Yes. Well, for me, I have this call to action that I say that I do every time. It's like get ahead of life before life gets ahead of you.
Hmm.
Meaning, love yourself, care for yourself, and trust yourself. Trust your body, trust what you feel, and don't let something get to where you're almost paralyzed to just do something about your life. Get ahead of your life. Be proactive in your life.
Yeah. Yeah. Mhm.
Definitely. Amaranthia, any last words?
Yeah. I feel like something I've learned, like especially from the bullying and what happened with my mom. She's had this cancer risk since 2015. We were
Two cancers.
really fortunate that it was the lesser
Yeah.
cancer. But I think that something that sticks with me is don't let resilience cause harm to yourself.
Definitely.
I feel like there were a lot of times in both of our lives where
Hmm.
we were like, we have to be resilient, we have to be strong, we have to. And again, going back to that, to the already
Strong black woman.
this issue of women have to take care of others before themselves, but
Hmm.
that's so strong again in the black community with black women, especially when disability is involved. You're supposed to kind of hide
Hmm.
that.
Hmm.
Hmm.
And mental health.
And mental health, especially invisible disabilities. And so I taught myself like I have to be resilient. I have to mask. I have to hide my symptoms. Um, and and then you did that with your physical symptoms.
Hmm.
And so we realized like no, it's about thriving, not surviving. It's about
Living.
being, you know, vulnerable with people that you can trust, like finding, self advocating, finding the right therapist, finding the right doctors who will listen and not giving up. I felt like a lot of times throughout my life, I've always self advocated, even if it took me a while to get there. Like I had a hard time standing up for myself in the beginning, but I've always self advocated. Even if people didn't listen, I'd be like, okay, next. And I'll keep going, okay, next, and just keep, trying to find the right people that would finally listen to me. And again, it took it for a therapist, it took me till I was like 22, but I
Mm.
never gave up. And it's the same thing with my mom. You see, she never gave up. From the time she was born, she was put in a horrible situation,
Yeah.
but she kept was like, I don't care. I'm not going to let anyone tell me otherwise. So I feel like, that kind of, that's both of us what we've done, especially in the last year,
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
like we talked about in my interview, it's if you go to the quote of the Garth Brooks, the country singer Garth Brooks song, "Life is not tried; it is merely survived if you're standing outside the fire." And you
mhm.
guys
Hmm.
decided you weren't going to stand outside of that fire anymore. You're going to jump in full tilt and sink or swim. You're going to do it. So
Yeah.
Yes.
and
Yeah.
I'm glad you did. And I'm very honored that you came on to share your story because
Thank
there's a
you.
lot of intimate stuff in there that some people wouldn't want to share, and you were willing to share it with us, and I really appreciate that. I know our guests are really appreciative. So why don't we end it with your little video here? It's the 2 minute video. We'll play
Okay.
that and then right off to the credits. But thank you again for showing here, and for anybody else out there, if you enjoy the show and you want to see more of these shows, and you want others to be able to share this stuff, be sure to go down. If you're on YouTube right now, go down to the subscribe button and hit subscribe. And let's get some more subscribers on there. Let's keep this channel going because I want to have more people like yourself on here to help share their stories, and let's help
Sure.
everybody out. So thank you very much. I wish you both all the best.
Thank you. Thank you.
And My prayers are with both of you, and I know you guys are going to be a success. I see the drive in you, so
Thank
I
you.
know you're going to be a success.
Yes.
So
So
I didn't have this video downloaded, so it's actually just going to be a screen share. So let's end it with that. And until next time, if anybody asks, remember, say the butler did it.
Yes.
hi everyone, I'm Amaranthia Sepia.
And I'm Claire Jones.
We're going to start that again because I believe you said that it was not sharing the audio.
Yeah, it went and then it played and then it stopped. I don't know
All
why.
right. When this is done, I'm going to go and recut it so that this part's not in it.
Okay.
But it should be on there. So we're going to try that again. And if it doesn't, we'll add it in later on.
Okay.
Okay.
So we're going to try that again because it says the audio is sharing. So we'll try that again.
I'm Claire Jones.
And we're Sister Creatives Rising. We're an invisibly disabled Black mother-daughter duo who develop virtual art shows for underrepresented women and femmes. So we're doing a quick intro video so you know what we're about. Our mission is to help marginalized women and femme creatives gain accessibility and visibility in the arts to facilitate personal healing. We develop a grassroots charitable art event and virtual gallery series called Art in Mind, which supports underrepresented women artists to share their journeys. We're partnered with BrainArts.org, a Boston nonprofit that supports marginalized creatives in their communities. Each Art in Mind, we raise funds for Brain Arts to continue their mission. In 2021, our Art in Mind show titled Reflections of Women Femmes and Their Mental Health During COVID raised $751.
In March 2022, I was suddenly diagnosed with B-cell lymphoma, which manifested as a massive tumor on my spine. And I went through emergency surgery, neuropathy, and a 50% chance of paralysis. Fortunately, I'm now in the 1% who can walk again after such surgery. 6 days after launching Sisters, I lost my mobility and was losing it by the hour. So we are now relaunching. Along with chemo and radiation, I was armed with my Buddhist faith, a 5-step daily practice I created to balance my life called Clarity's Just So Hip, plus an audiobook titled Heal Your Life by Louise Hay. And I pulled my life back from the edge. Now in remission, we've decided to work on the next Art in Mind for 2023 titled I Know Who I Am. A more detailed video will be coming soon. Stay safe and protected in your brilliant life. Thank you.